Okay, so we are live. Good evening, everyone from Israel. I'm going to wait a couple of minutes to get some viewers to make sure that we're heard and we're seen. And then I'm going to introduce you to a very special guest, somebody whom years ago I bumped into some of his videos about the Israeli-Arab conflict, and I could tell that he knows exactly who the enemy is, and he knows exactly how to face such enemy, and he knew exactly back then what such enemy can do to the people of Israel, while the people of Israel, especially our military generals, have this concept that we live in some sort of a Western fairy tale world and not in the Middle East. The Middle East has its own language. And so I want to introduce you to Mr. Chaim Ben Pesach in the United States. I know that from a little background I did, that Chaim is one of the founders of the Jewish Defense League in the United States that was literally in charge of defending Jews from anti-Semitic attack, as well as trying to put pressure on what used to be Soviet Union's officials in America to be able to open the Iron Curtain and let Jews move to Israel. He since then has done many videos on his own forum that he's got online for, I think, for over 20 years now, or close to that, where he speaks exactly what we're witnessing today. In fact, Chaim, I think there was a video of you that I once saw in a local American TV channel that you pretty much predicted 9/11. Was that true? Welcome to the show, by the way.
Thank you very much. Well, it's a long story, yes. 7 years before the attacks on 9/11, 7 years to the day, I did a program on cable television in New York. We had a cable television program, and we were speaking about how the Arab terrorists who attacked the World Trade Center, they attacked before, they attacked once before 9/11. And I predicted that they would come back and that they would destroy the World Trade Center, that they were determined to come back and finish the job, because that was their intention the first time they attacked. And yes, we made that prediction. I tried to warn people, the FBI, the New York Police Department, they ignored all the warnings.
So you actually warned them about 9/11. You knew that another attack was coming, but no one was listening to you.
I had no doubt that they were going to return. I didn't know the exact date, but I had no doubt that they were going to return, and that their intention was to try to bring down the World Trade Center. I knew that that was what they intended to do. And we were very involved with the issue, because the same people who carried out 9/11 were the murdered Rabbi Meir Kahane, our leader. And in fact, that was the first terrorist attack of Al-Qaeda, because they realized that Rabbi Kahane was warning the Jews and the Gentile world about the threat of Islamic terrorism. Because people don't understand what Islam stands for and what the Muslim world really stands for. And we try to explain this to people, and if people understood just how serious this is, just how dangerous this is, they'd realize what peril Israel, America, the whole Western world is in at this time. Tremendous danger.
Now, I want to make it clear. We're not talking about all Muslims. We're talking about those who take that ideology and translate it into terrorism. For example, there are some Muslim countries like Indonesia and Malaysia that these people, they practice Islam, and even Azerbaijan, who's an ally, a military ally with Israel. Do you think that it applies to them too, or are you talking about Islam as a whole, or just some groups within Islam?
No, I'm speaking about Islam, what the Islamic religion says. And if they believe in the Quran and they believe in the Islamic religion, according to the Islamic religion, there are only two places in the world. There are only two zones in the world. There's Dar al-Islam, which means the nations that are under Islamic control. And there's Dar al-Harb, which are the nations that are under the control of the sword, of the war, that you have to make war against them and liberate the whole world liberating quotes. In other words, create an Islamic world. The world has to be conquered for Islam. This is what Muhammad preached in the Quran. This is what they're taught, and they do believe in the Quran. The Muslims they really believe in the Quran and live by the Quran. And so what we have to understand in regard to Israel, the Muslims do not really recognize, they don't recognize legitimacy of any non-Muslim country. They believe the whole world has to be Islamic. And even if there are Muslims in Indonesia and other places that temporarily, for business reasons and for economic reasons, are not yet doing jihad, that doesn't mean that they don't dream of the day when the whole world will be Islamic. Every Muslim is required to, he's commanded to. And if they don't accept that the United States is a legitimate country, and they don't accept countries in Europe and India and Canada and Australia and all these other countries, if they don't accept the legitimacy of those countries, they will never accept the legitimacy of a tiny Jewish state in the middle of the Muslim world, in the middle of the Arab world. They will never accept that, especially a tiny Jewish state that defeated them and humiliated the whole Arab world in wars. Israel was outnumbered 100-1 and won 6-day wars against them. They will never forgive the Jews for surviving. They wanted to destroy the Jews and carry out a Holocaust, and the Jews survived and defeated them. And they will never forgive or never forget that happened. They are determined to destroy Israel. And if we look at the history of the Muslims, you look at the history, they've already carried out Holocausts against their own people. I mean, we see this. The Iran-Iraq War, 2 million Muslims were slaughtered by other Muslims in the Iran-Iraq War, by their fellow Muslims. In Syria, 1 million Muslims have been slaughtered, 1 million Arab Muslims have been slaughtered by their fellow Arabs. In Lebanon, 500,000 Arabs have been slaughtered by other Arabs. And it's not just the Arab Muslim world. Turkey murdered 2 million Armenians. There was a Holocaust against the Armenians in Turkey. Pakistan in 1971, they murdered 3 million Bengali Muslims, a Holocaust in 1971. If this is what they do to each other, what do you think they would do to the hated non-Muslim infidels if they had the chance? This is what people have to understand.
And I'm glad you went back to Israel. I want to go back to Israel and what's going on here right now. And we're going to break it down to how it started, what's going on right now, which I'm not really, unlike a lot of people. First of all, I have to say, I support and love the IDF soldiers and forces who are out there risking their lives fighting evil. However, I do not fully trust what's behind the wheel. I don't see anything different than previous operations. Yeah, maybe I'm wrong, but right now I don't see anything. All these humanitarians, I mean, we have 199 people who were kidnapped in the most brutal of ways, violating any international law out there. And we're now worried about how their citizens are going to move south. I don't think it should be any of our problem, but let me ask you this, Chaim. I know that you were shocked, like the most of us, for the loss of life and the loss of Jewish innocent blood. But tell me the truth, were you surprised from that brutality and I don't even know, I mean, there are videos that unfortunately, I needed to look at evil in the eye and expose myself to these videos. But of course, we cannot upload them to the group or to any social media platform because they're horrid. They're very, very, I mean, it's like scenes taken from horror movie studios. It's just horrid the way that these people not only kill them in their homes, but later on abuse their corpse to the best of their ability, quote unquote. And that was just horrid. So, and I know you probably was exposed to some of that stuff online, maybe, but let me ask you a question. Were you surprised? Where's this brutality coming from?
This is, I wasn't surprised because I know the history of what Muslims do when they wage war. And so I wasn't surprised. In fact, Rabbi Kahana, our leader, who was murdered by Muslim terrorists from Al-Qaeda in 1990, he always used to say, if they could, they would carry out a Holocaust against Israel, but it would be much more brutal than the German Holocaust, because the German Holocaust, they murdered Jews in gas chambers and ovens, and it was horrible. It was the worst crime in human history. But the Arabs would do it with torture and rape and the worst type of brutality humanly imaginable. They cut off the heads of little babies in front of their parents. They burned babies in front of their parents. They raped women in front of their parents or in front of their husbands. They paraded naked Jewish women and naked Jewish girls through the streets of Gaza City, paraded them around like trophies, while thousands of Arabs lined the streets chanting and screaming, "Death to Israel, death to America." This is brutality that is just beyond the pale. It's beyond human comprehension how people could be so cruel, so evil, so sadistic. And this is what they did. This is what they've done even to their fellow Muslims. In the Iran-Iraq war, they used chemical warfare to burn the skin off of little children. Unbelievable things that took place here. By the way, they raped little girls. To rape a little girl, I mean, these are people who claim to be devout religious Muslims. What type of religion teaches you to do things like this? This is beyond belief. So if they could, they would exterminate every last Jew in Israel. And what happened in Gaza would happen to all the Jews of Israel if they ever had the opportunity. And God forbid, if we ever create a so-called Palestinian state, they will have that chance, God forbid.
You're right. And I must add to that, a lot of people in the news, even our military higher-ups, they talk about Hamas and to separate Hamas from the citizens of Gaza as if Hamas was some sort of an outer space entity that just landed in Gaza and took them all hostages. I have to tell people, I have videos. They don't tell you the truth. The media has that narrative that they want you to follow, but they don't tell you the truth. Did you know that about 20 minutes to an hour after the invasion of these Hamas, Nukhbas, elite forces, terrorists, dozens, I think hundreds, if not even more than that, almost 1,000 citizens of this northern town of Bet Hanun in northern Gaza Strip, they came through. They helped murder. They helped raping, and they even stole people's stuff out of their homes. Some farming equipment, tractors, cars, and they kidnapped people as well. You couldn't tell who was a Hamas citizen, quote unquote, and a terrorist at that time. And just like Chaim mentioned, they took him and marched with them naked in the streets, and people were spitting at them and beating them. And even if there was a dead soldier that was already dead, they still stepped on his head. And I'm like, these are subhumans. And this is not about being racist. We're not even talking about a neutral race. When you when you cut babies' heads, and then you have the nerves to call for humanitarian aid, and the world is trying to help you, then I think that Israel is running out of time. What do you think, Chaim? What should be done right now?
No question about it. I just want to say, because you mentioned racism, first of all, the color of someone's skin does not interest us. We're not interested in someone's race. It's of no interest to us. We're interested if someone's evil. I don't care what their race is. If someone's a barbarian, a murderer, a rapist, I don't care what their race is. They have to be stopped. Israel, from the start, has gone into this just like they went into all the other battles in recent years with the defeatist attitude. Unfortunately, they're not doing what they should do. The goal of Israel, there should be two goals in this campaign, in this war against the terrorists in Gaza. Number one, to, of course, retaliate and kill they have to kill all of the Hamas terrorists and show that people who do things like this are not going to live. Number two, they have to create a situation where the Arabs in Gaza will flee, where they'll leave Gaza permanently. That's the situation they have to create. There cannot be coexistence between Jews and millions of people who want a Holocaust against the Jews. and who have proven again and again that they will slaughter Jews every minute they get a chance. You can't have coexistence between two groups of people like this. You can't have coexistence between Jews and Nazis. And these are the Nazis of our generation. These are the heirs to the legacy of Hitler and the Nazis. In fact, what they've done, the way they murdered Jews is even crueler than the murder we saw during the Holocaust. It's just barbarism that is just beyond description. And so,
with your permission, I'm going to show to the viewers here something that I prepared because you brought it up, and I want to show you the link between the so-called Palestinian national movement with Nazism. Okay, so the Mufti, he was the highest religious authority in Israel before 1948. He actually met with Hitler. He assisted Hitler and Eichmann with starting SS groups from Muslim European countries. I think it was Bosnia, something like that. And he had his own squads, and he actually was awarded general by Eichmann. So I'm going to show you that meeting right now. So this guy here, who's shaking Hitler's hand, that's who all so-called Palestinians are looking up to. That's their spiritual leader. And that meeting had one thing in common. How do we kill as many Jews as possible? They had no other, that Arab Sheik right now was not what Hitler considered the Aryan race, but they had one thing in common. They had one goal: how many Jews we can kill. Right, Chaim?
No question about it. No question about it. And in fact, Hitler was a hero to the Arabs during the Holocaust. They loved him. They
still is in Egypt.
Yeah.
Mein Kampf used to be one of the best-selling books. So listen to this, guys. A book about eliminating Jews in the most horrid of ways is Egypt's best-selling book, or used to be.
The second best-selling after the Quran. The second best-selling after the Quran, yes. But not only in Egypt, throughout the Arab world.
Yes, so it just shows you, and we're supposed to be having so-called peace with them. There's no peace with them. I'm telling you now, there's no peace with them. Because right now, if their people had the ability to just break the walls, they would come and do exactly what Hamas is doing. If the Arabs from Judea and Samaria had the ability, had the power to break the walls, and they might try soon. I think personally, it's a part of the bigger picture. This is not really Israel versus Hamas. This is Israel versus Iran. And Chaim, I'm going to take you to one of your videos when you urged Netanyahu, you almost urged every government, bomb Iran before you can't do it anymore, because they are the biggest threat for Israel as far as existence, correct?
Yes, they're on the verge of building nuclear bombs. And unfortunately, the Israeli government, which had the ability to destroy their nuclear program, and I still think should attack and destroy the nuclear program, they are a tremendous threat to Israel. And just as people were shocked at the attack from Gaza, they'll be shocked if Iran has nuclear bombs and eventually someday even uses them. They'll be shocked. But everything is possible if we allow the Iranians to acquire nuclear weapons. It's very, very dangerous. I just want to add one other thing, because you mentioned Judea and Samaria and the Arabs in Judea and Samaria. Judea and Samaria is the one place where we're winning in the war right now, because the hilltop youth, these heroic Jews, there are heroic young Jews who have created hilltop communities in Judea and Samaria. You know that Arabs are fleeing from Judea and Samaria in large numbers because of the hilltop youth. In the villages and areas around, thousands of Arabs are fleeing their homes because of the hilltop youth. That's the one place where we're winning in this war. That's the one place where people are doing what should be done. I'm sorry.
That's like in America, that's like the wall that everybody's talking about. They're like the wall between the American people and very, very, very bad things. Because right now in America, they've been starting to detain people from countries such as Lebanon, Iran, even Gaza. People from Gaza infiltrate the southern border. So, you know, not all of them go there to work. Not all of them go there to better their lives. A lot of them go there with bad intentions. And then when the next time something, God forbid, like 9/11 happens, don't say we didn't tell you so. I mean, right now, I think the mask has been removed. But I want to ask you, Chaim, do you think that what we're experiencing now, because all throughout the day, Hezbollah and yesterday and the day before, is not only provoking the IDF, but actually claiming lives and precisely targeting Israeli posts with Russian anti-tank missiles, doing damages. And I can't help by wondering what's with the Israeli response. And by the way, so people know, when they tell you that the IDF responds, the IDF, we launch artillery into open spaces. We don't even hit the enemy. Okay, the enemy is trying to killing us, but we're not killing the enemy back. And this is very concerning, because I know Middle Eastern studies, and in the Arab war culture, when you show weakness, like when you run away from terrorism, terrorism runs right after you, but with more speed, with more faith that they can destroy you. So withdrawing and hesitating is a bad recipe in the Middle East in general, in particular in Israel, which is a tiny, like Chaim said, a tiny Western civilization in a sea of chaos and barbarism.
No question about it. And because of the policies of successive Israeli governments allowing Hezbollah to build up its missiles, there are now 250,000 missiles and rockets that Hezbollah has aimed at Israeli cities and towns. Hezbollah poses a much greater threat to Israel than Hamas. And the fact that this was allowed to reach this point shows the bankruptcy of Israeli leaders. What a joke we have as Israeli leaders. I mean, they allowed this to happen to the point where we're facing 250,000 missiles, and the war with Hezbollah could start any time now. That could happen at any time, and that will be much worse than what we saw from.
And people have to understand, when you're talking about Hezbollah, it's not only 250,000 rockets and missiles. They were able during that time from 2006 until now. First of all these years, they've violated every UN decision that was agreed upon in the end of that war in 2006. They violated everything, and they always got away with that. Nobody said anything in the UN, and Israel, of course, never said anything. And they were smuggling weapons. Iran was spreading slowly but surely and armed Hezbollah with GPS, with guided missiles. They have missiles that are aimed and guided directly into Israeli important infrastructure and air bases. And for those of you who don't know, Israel is so small. It's so small. It's like 20-something miles wide. I mean, you know how wide it is, right? It's like 20-something miles wide. So, I mean,
yeah, it depends what you're speaking about, but yes, the center where most of the population is, it's very, very narrow.
The center, which is Gush Dan, which is where the center of all the economy is, and the important military bases. And anyways, Hezbollah, when a war breaks out with them, Israel's going to win, but us, the citizens, will be in the front. The front line will come to us. I'm talking about, you'll see sites here, like, God forbid, but you'll see sites here like you see in the Ukraine, like people without power for days, without water. I mean, it's going to be chaos, because I know, because I always follow the Arab networks, what they're doing right now, it's part of a bigger plan. Iran is orchestrating everything. They started with Gaza. They're now provoking us from Lebanon. They're wanting us to go deep inside Gaza, and then they're going to start. and that's including the Arabs in Judea and Samaria and the Israeli Arabs. And I want to ask Chaim, do you think that such scenario can happen, or do you see that ending simply with Hamas being eliminated and the hell with what's going on with Gaza afterwards?
No, I absolutely can happen. It certainly can happen, and Israel must deal with this threat from Hezbollah from the north. Israel has to take that threat out. Whether they wait until they're finished with Hamas, but eventually they've got to take that out. Just as we've said for years, they've got to take out the Iranian nuclear threat before it's too late. Hashem, God, may have saved Israel. But as horrible and as tragic as it is, this horrible attack by Hamas may have saved Israel from an even worse disaster. Because Israel was on the verge of agreeing to a so-called peace with Saudi Arabia, where they were going to give technology to the Saudis to build nuclear weapons. This would have been a catastrophe. Then Iran, the Saudis, and the whole Muslim world, then the whole Muslim world would say, well, we have to build nuclear weapons in response. You'd have a nuclear arms race, and Turkey and Egypt and Jordan and Iraq would all be building nuclear bombs. That would be the ultimate nightmare, the ultimate threat of a Holocaust, a nuclear Holocaust. So it could be that this was intended to save Israel, or to try to wake Israel up as to these dangers, because all of Israel was marching blindly toward this. Everybody was saying, oh, that would be so wonderful, peace with Saudi Arabia, which by the way, the Saudis also want to destroy Israel. And Egypt, which we have a so-called treaty with, wants to destroy Israel. We see Egypt's behavior now. We see what Egypt is doing. Egypt is doing everything to defeat Israel in this war and to help Hamas.
And Jordan as well.
Jordan, all of them. I mean, because when the moment of truth comes, people say to me, but I'm friends with the Arabs. They're so nice to me. I work with Arabs. They're so nice. I work with Arab doctors and nurses. I've gotten into these debates with people, but in the end, and the moment of truth, they're all going to be on the Arab side. And that
I'm glad you're saying this. I'm sorry for interrupting you. Today in the news, I read that about 4 different doctors, some of them are very, very senior doctors in Israeli hospitals, were suspended for praising Hamas in their social network, including a police officer, even a soldier, even an Arab IDF soldier was praising Hamas. A lot of grocery store workers, some of them are Arabs, they go on social media, but I must say that the Israeli police nowadays during this war have zero tolerance to that, and the people getting arrested because they're being reported. Now, Chaim, I want to take you to politics, if you would, to American politics. How do you see the Biden administration, with this support? And by the way, I like to separate. I thank the American people for this support. I think the American people, the American values, the American spirit is our true support. But what do you think about Biden coming here with almost 2 aircraft carriers and having the speech that he had? Do you think that he really means what he says, or it's all part of a greater political scheme?
It's part of a greater political scheme. His objective, he said it openly in his interview on television last night, that his goal is to create an independent Palestinian state. After everything that has happened, he wants to create an independent Palestinian state. First of all, there's no such thing as a Palestinian people. There has never been a Palestinian people in history. The Arabs themselves, I'm 67 years old. And when I was a child, I remember all the Arabs and all the Arab leaders saying, there's no such thing as Palestinians. Don't call us Palestinians. We're Arabs. We're not Palestinian. They always said that. The Arabs all said that. Then in the 1960s, because of a self-hating Jew named Uri Avneri, he went to Arafat and convinced Arafat that you have to create a Palestinian people. It's better for Arab propaganda. The self-hating Jew had to go and do this against his own people, the left-wing self-hating Jew. And so they created this people as a propaganda device to destroy Israel. But anyway, Biden wants to create an independent Palestinian state. This would leave Israel in borders that are 6 to 9 miles wide, 10 kilometers, 6 to 9 miles wide. That would be insanity. What we had in Gaza would happen all over the state of Israel. This could lead to a Holocaust. all of Israel will turn into what Gaza was on Simchat Torah. Golda Meir, who was from the left-wing Socialist Labor Party, she was the Prime Minister of Israel. She said any Jew who supports going to those borders would have to be a traitor. She said boged, which in Hebrew means traitor. Abba Ibn, or Abba Evan, we say in Hebrew, in English, Abba Ibn. He said that the 1967 borders are Auschwitz lines, suicide lines, and Abba Ibn was a left-wing foreign minister of Israel. He was so left-wing, even the Labor Party rejected him. And he called them Auschwitz lines, suicide lines. This is what Biden wants to impose on Israel. This is the whole Democrat Party is an anti-Semitic party. I'm sorry, but they are. They're an anti-Semitic party. They're anti-Israel. They hate Israel. And unfortunately, a lot of the self-hating Jews in the Democrat Party also hate Israel. And they want to impose on Israel this insanity. We have to stop this. And by the way, the hope for stopping a so-called Palestinian state is also with what we call Noar HaGevaot, which means the hilltop youth. They're the ones who can stop. They are the obstacle to creating a Palestinian state in Judea and Samaria, and that's why we have to support them.
Great. Well, let me ask you that. Do you think that in any way Russia is involved in this? I mean, I've reading some reports that the Russians were, training or helping Hamas behind the scenes or helping the Iranians, and it's all in exchange to what the Iranians did for them in Ukraine with the drones and all that?
The Russians certainly have helped the Iranians. I mean, they helped the Iranians even with their nuclear program, and they're still helping with their nuclear program. The Russians have been involved in assisting the Iranians and in assisting Hezbollah. So, and that of course that helps Hamas and that helps all the enemies of Israel. There's no question about it that Russia is hostile to Israel, always has been, and always will be.
And I want to ask you one more thing before I play another clip. Second. You know what? Let me just play the clip really quick, and I want to go through this with you. This is where the terrorists. Actually, these are let me rewind it really quick. These are Gaza so-called innocent people coming from their villages and towns into the murder scenes, just stealing Israeli equipment. You see some were driving tractors, some trying to steal stuff from the houses, and they all load up and looting the houses while there are bodies, fresh bodies in there. All this agriculture, see, all these farming equipment is being stolen. And that's after some of these citizens were killing Jews, were kidnapping them and stealing all of their equipment. As you can tell, this is just crazy. That was the morning of the attack, by the way. The morning of the attack. Chaim, right now there's a lot of uncertainty of what's going on. They're saying that Anthony Blinken was present in the Israeli secret cabinet meeting, and some go far and say that the United States is really running that war for Israel. They're already talking about ceasefire, humanitarian this and that. And the Egyptians, they don't want to open the southern Rafah crossing. They're barricading it. They want the Gazans to stay in Gaza. And it's not because they don't want to help them, but they want Israel to be stuck with them. It's all part of the strategy to pressure Israel. I'm just concerned that, do you think that we are ready for an all-out war with all the fronts? Because I'm telling you guys, if Hezbollah will go in, they cannot lose Hamas. A lot of people say, finish with Hamas and go with Hezbollah. It's not going to happen. They see it, and they've been talking about it for years in their social media about uniting all the fronts. They see it as the moment that will never return, because they know that after that we'll know better how to defend ourselves. So at least I hope so as a country. So they see it as do or die. If the IDF is going to get into Gaza, I hope not, but I believe that the Hezbollah will launch an all-out attack, which also get the Iranian militias from Syria and the Golan Heights involved, also getting the Houthis from Yemen involved, the Hezbollah Iraqi militias, the Shiites from northern Iraq involved, and all these people, it sounds like silly names and to small terror organizations, but these people are equipped with ballistic missiles that can reach Israel. Now imagine you're getting missiles from Hezbollah, from Syria, from Yemen, from northern Iraq, some from Gaza, and then the Arabs from Judea and Samaria will take advantage of the opportunity, because that's what they do. That's what they just proved us 9 days ago. When they have the chance to kill a Jew, they do it. And then what do we do then, Chaim? What should Israel do then?
Well, Israel is in a very bad spot because they allowed all of this to grow and fester and get worse and worse. And it's created a trap for Israel, which is very, very bad. I think, by the way, the sending of those two destroyers from the United States that Biden sent is more dangerous to Israel than Hamas, because Israel is in danger of losing her sovereignty. When Blinken attends Israeli cabinet security meetings, I mean, this is unheard of. This is insane. What Israel is someone from a foreign country is coming in and attending your security meetings to dictate to you what's going to happen in the war? It's insane. And Israel, by the way, is already giving relief supplies to the enemy, which is also something that never happens. When the United States went to war against Saddam Hussein in the Persian Gulf War in 1991, they didn't give relief supplies to the Iraqis and the Iraqi civilians when they went in. They carpet bombed the whole country and killed hundreds of thousands.
And they didn't warn them 48 hours before to leave their houses and go south or north or west or east. They didn't warn anybody. It was a shock.
Right.
It was a shock. And I'm telling you, one of the Israeli ministers, I think it was Israel Katz, he just 2 days ago, he went out and in a press conference, he said, I won't turn any water. I won't let any truck come in. I won't do anything until we get our kidnapped, our hostages back. And all of a sudden things change. And now we started talking about humanitarian this and humanitarian that. This is not how you defeat Hamas. Hamas is not just those militants. Hamas is Gaza, and Gaza is Hamas. Every single one of them. They voted them in. This is their idea. That's what they wanted. Some of them have weapons and some of them don't. But they're all Hamas. Hamas meaning you want to defeat Hamas. And I'm telling you as a Middle Eastern scholar, you want to defeat Hamas, you relocate all the population to somewhere in Sinai or Egypt or I don't know where, I don't care. And you make that area either a demilitarized zone or Israel just annex it. If you want to defeat terrorism, you conquer them. All throughout, if you study Islam, the only thing that they care about more than their own lives is their land, is their property. When you till this day, they think that Spain is a Muslim country because they conquered Spain. And until then, that's why they always say Spain will be back to be Islamic. So just like Chaim said in the beginning, the house of war and the house of peace, a house of Islam and the house of war. And if you're not part of the house of Islam, meaning if you're not Muslim, in one day you're doomed to die. You either convert or die. It's very simple. Now, the last topic I want to go over with you, Chaim, is, I watch Fox News a lot because I can't stand watching the Israeli media. It's very, let's put it that way. It's very biased. It's very agenda driven. They don't really give us news. But I want to know, what do you think about these demonstrations in the U.S. colleges? I see people in hundreds knowing what happened, knowing about the massacre, hearing it everywhere, yet chant Free Palestine. And pretty much when they protest pro-Gaza, that means they're pro-Hamas. They justify what happened. And those who don't want to justify what happened simply say it never happened. Just like you have Holocaust deniers, now you have this massacre, this second Holocaust deniers. They're saying it's because of us. They're saying Hamas has all the right to do that. And the American people are not flooding the streets knowing like, hey, look who we're having within us. Not only that, but they are our future. They are our college students. And colleges refuse to condemn them, like the Harvard president who said they have the right to say what they want, even if you don't like to hear that, something like that. What do you think about that culture?
Well, one thing we can learn from this, all of the Jews who all these years condemned Rabbi Kahana and the Kahanas for saying that educating the Muslim enemies of Israel and giving them new economic benefits, that's not going to buy them over. These are students. Muslim students are leading these protests. Muslim students who are being educated in America's best universities. In other words, these are Muslim students with money who are in America, who are getting the best university education, who are getting scholarships that would cost an average American would not get this scholarship. The scholarships they're getting would cost you $100,000 a semester to go to these universities. And they're getting this for free. They're getting all these benefits, and then they're holding demonstrations glorifying the Hamas Nazis for cutting off the heads of Jewish babies, for raping little Jewish girls, for parading Jewish women through the streets of Gaza naked, for they're chanting death to Israel and death to America. These are people who get the best of everything. And look what happens. So we see that you cannot buy off evil people by giving them university educations and money and better economic conditions. So all the Jews who thought, let's uplift the living standards of the Arabs, that's going to fix things for us. That's not going to fix anything. In fact, when you give them education, when you educate them, you're making them more dangerous because they're better leaders and they're more capable of fighting against you when you do that. And the leaders of their movement are people who got Western education in Western universities. So, you mentioned before Yisrael Katz, making statements about Gaza and about how he's not going to restore the electricity. He voted in favor of the expulsion from Gush Katif, the pogrom in Gush Katif. Gush Katif was a section of Gaza where you had beautiful Jewish communities, 36 beautiful, flourishing Jewish communities, and they were brutally expelled by an Israeli government that wanted to hand over all of Gaza to the enemies of the Jewish people, and did so. And they threw 10,000 Jews out of their homes. If we had not surrendered in Gush Katif and had not expelled the Jews in Gush Katif, if we had not given up Sinai to Egypt, none of this would have happened. And so one lesson of this war is every withdrawal, every surrender, every time you make concessions to the enemies of Israel and to the nations surrounding Israel, it only leads to more war and more bloodshed and more catastrophe.
And as you speak, we're hearing very loud explosion outside our windows. We never got a red alert or anything, but sometimes so the explosions are loud and they're daily, but we're going to win. Chaim, you mentioned these protesters. It's not just Islamic students. It's not just Muslim students, but unfortunately, there's a lot of progressive Jews that march alongside with them and praise Hamas, and I was shocked. We're talking about the woke program, we're talking about the progressive, we're talking about the liberals, but when it comes to know your enemy, or when it comes to praising terrorism, after 9/11, you could have never done what you did. It's like me after 9/11 going and glorifying bin Laden. What would happen to me? I would be arrested, the FBI would deal with me and whatnot. In France right now, I think it was in France or the UK, but the Minister of Justice announced that whoever's going to come out and praise Hamas and protest with the Palestinian flag and call anti-Semitic chants is going to be arrested and imprisoned for 5 years. And in America, these people, you have Hamas in the street. I live in Israel in mixed city, that, and I don't want to say the name of the city, but that there was the city that suffered the most in Shomer HaChomot, in Guardian of the Walls. Yeah, we had a sheikh here that he was inciting and starts with an L. Anyways, in here, a lot of the so-called Israeli Arabs are Hamas supporters. Because in the last Gaza operation, Shomer HaChamot, guardian of the walls, they were chanting in the streets with torches. They were trying to burn Jews alive. They went with torches into my brother and my sister-in-law's building. They have kids, and they wanted to set the whole building in fire. We're talking about the horrors of what happened in this massacre just because of the intensity and the numbers. But you remember the Fogel family was slaughtered just in the same barbaric way in their home while they were sleeping, but it's just one family. So it's not, the suicide bombing in buses. Back then I was a police officer. I went into these buses and the restaurants right after they blew up. You see the same sights. And you have to be an animal, not a human being, to fight for any cause. And especially to say that you fight for God or you want to be a martyr or whatnot, and to blow up people and these student colleges supposed to be educated. They don't even want to hear the truth. They're like zombies. They're blinded. They have tunnel vision over we don't care how many Jews died. We go for Palestine, even though there is no such thing. But Chaim, the last video I'm going to show, and I'm going to just speak about with you the scandal. I know we're in the middle of a war, but still, how these people came in the kibbutzim, in the commonwealth over there, where because the areas that were destroyed by the Sharon government, the Jews who lived in the Gaza Strip were expelled, were just kicked out of their house brutally with force, by force. They could have stopped it, and they would have stopped it. And because they're not there, this is what you see. Well, when we saw that one before, let me see if it's this one. That's the part. That's what I want to tell you. People partying. You can see in the highlighted the paragraph. That's where we came to this party, shooting at everyone. Now you can see when people start running. If you didn't see these pictures, you can hear gunshots in the background. That was just a massacre. And I'm telling you something, they're not even telling you the real numbers yet. They're not even telling you the real numbers. I have some people in the police tell me, if you knew the real numbers, you would be shocked. That shows you why we cannot even think about a Palestinian state. We cannot even think about coexistence. Like saying that after the Holocaust, the Jewish community should go back and coexist with the Third Reich and with Hitler and his Nazis. Could you believe, could you even agree to something like that? This is even worse. Right, Chaim, final words from you.
I hope that people will get involved and will decide to work with us to wake the Jewish people up. People are invited to come to our English language main page, jtf.org. JTF is the Jewish Task Force. That's the name of our organization in English. And for those of you who speak Hebrew, if I'm sure there are people who speak Hebrew also that are watching. אתם מוזמנים לבוא לאתר שלנו, הימין.org, וגם לחשבון הטוויטר שלנו. And so I hope people will get involved because there are things we can do to wake the Jewish people up and to make a difference, but we have to get involved.
And listen to this man, ladies and gentlemen, because I brought him in here tonight for my first live with this new group, because he said this exactly would happen. He was talking about the brutality of our enemy to a point when people couldn't hear what he had to say. And not because they think he's a racist, it's because they couldn't believe these people are capable to do what they did, and they just proved the whole world. All of a sudden, you hear countries that used to condemn Israel from the get-go, now people are people, and they wake up to the truth. So once you wake up to the truth and you know who are the good side and who's the bad side, and we're only the beginning, unfortunately, I want to pray God, Hashem, to please bless the country of Israel and its people and its soldiers and get us out of this trouble. And please punish our enemies because they are punishable. They violated every human norm there is. My heart is aching over my people, but I can also see the unity the strength, the durability of the Jewish people, because I'm telling you, I'm here in the middle of this war, and I know that these events are biblical. If you open the Bible and you read the book of Ezekiel, and especially Ezekiel 38, this is being foretold. And we just have to trust Hashem. And just like Chaim said, trust the right cause, and please support his cause. So it's jtf.org.
Yes.
jtf.org. I'm telling you, this forum's been going on for years, almost 20 years. Is that 20 years or so?
Even more.
He's been consistent, and he's been talking about the problem. And trust me, no political correctness. And I know that some of you patriot Americans and Israelis love that. You craved it now after you've been brainwashed for so many years by the mainstream media. So go to jtf.org, check Chaim out in his views. He's simply telling the truth. And that's what we need now in our world. We need to know the real truth, who we're facing against, who we are, what's coming, so we can be better prepared. Chaim, I want to thank you so much for taking the time and speaking to us and even educating us. And I hope we'll speak again, and I hope that you'll be a guest in this show as we grow, though I hope it's going to be only covering good things and not worse.
Amen. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.